parts of the clippers. This is kind of just going an overview of our tools. Parts of the clippers, we have a mechanical blade, and the mechanical blade, the con to it is it frays hair. So the difference between a clipper cut and a cut with shears is a cut with shears is going to typically grow out better than a cut with clippers. It's going to grow out a little bit smoother. You're probably going to get a little more life on the haircut. When the hair frays, you don't really, it kind of frays the ends of it. You're not going to see it a lot of times because it's real smooth, but as it grows out, the haircut gets a little fuzzier. Around the hairline. Around the hairline, that's really important because if we really clean around the hairline, kind of like with your question, that's going to give you a lot more life with the haircut. It's going to give you at least another 2 weeks or a week on a haircut. So the mechanical blade, that's the con. The pro to it is, it's a quick way of cutting hair. It's probably a little bit easier if we're using guards. Again, it's like using training wheels. That's kind of how I compare the two. Don't get me wrong, I cut a lot with guards and with clippers when I started learning how to cut men's hair. And I don't know how many thousands of men's haircuts I've done. And that's how I started. I started fading, I started using guards. It kind of gave me a better idea of what I was trying to do working around the structure of the hair. So I'm not knocking anybody for using guards and clippers. It's something that's fine to use. I use them sometimes. And truthfully, all of these techniques have a place in our arsenal, in our tool belt. Every technique that we use, whether it's razor cutting, scissor cutting, clipper over comb, compared to scissor over comb, all of them can be used. I'll use all the techniques in one haircut sometimes. There are different parts of the head that I need to get to with a pair, with a comb and a pair of clippers that I can't really get to with the shears. If I want to get it real low, I can get it real low with a pair of shears, but I may want to go with the clippers. Plus, if we're dealing with time, as you're learning really to do more men's hair cutting, you have a timing issue. So I understand clippers are a little bit quicker. I would rather have you use a guard if that's where you're comfortable at, to kind of get used to what you're doing in the motion of it, and to give you guys some margin of error. But it's limited. It's very limited. And so I ask you to kind of step out of your box a little bit. Using clippers, I want to think about, obviously proper hand placement. What I'm talking about is instead of grabbing down here on your clipper and just coming up with it, because with clipper cutting, I want to look at, I'm moving with the head, the shape of the head, so I want to be able to kind of pull out and work on the bone structure, right? So it's easier, and the proper way of cutting with clippers is if I actually use my thumb, and I'm holding the shears or the clippers like this, because then it's just an easy motion.
It frees up your wrist.
It frees up your wrist, gives you more mobility. Exactly. So that's just a little thing to do with that. Again, there's limited mobility with the clippers. I can do so much with it, and there's so much I can't do with it. If I do clipper over comb, I have a little more mobility because I can work with the shape of the head again. But if I'm using guards, there's only so much I can do, especially when we get up around the bridal ridge. So that's kind of why I have don't get too high on the haircut. I don't want to go up past the bridal ridge with the clippers too often. Now, if they're real short, if it's a real short cut where I'm just cutting all the way down, there's times that I'll even take a guard and just kind of go across if it's a nice kind of flat bridal ridge and kind of go against the grain on it, go against the growth pattern, and kind of bring it down. But in general, I want to remember that if I'm mapping out this clipper haircut, I really don't want to go past the bridal ridge so much, right? So where with shears, and that's another point, if I'm not real comfortable with clipper, scissor over comb, I want to at least be comfortable in this area. I need to work this area at least with the shears, especially if you're leaving some hair on top. Okay, so I have, don't get too high and cut in the growth pattern. So when I'm combing down the hair and I'm kind of seeing where the growth pattern is going, I want to cut into the growth pattern all the time, unless I'm dealing with African American hair. That's a different thing. I'll go with the growth pattern. And the pros is I can get a close fade with the clippers. I can, get a quick, even haircut. And what I mean by even is the clipper and the guard is going to pretty much make sure that my haircut's even. But if I'm looking for a real textured look, I don't really want even, right? And at the same time, I can get pretty even with a pair of shears, but that just takes a little bit of time and work and practice with it. Okay, again, if I'm using the clippers, I want to pull outward on them. You know, a lot of times you see when people come up, you'll come up and you'll make a line and stop. And that's how I started cutting hair. I put a line in it and I took, you know, I adjusted my shears or my clippers back a little bit, went up and made another little line, put the next smallest guard, went up and worked your way up the hair like that. Well, that's not efficient. And at the same time, you're probably going to leave little lines in the hair that you may not even see real close, but you may, you know, that can cause a problem. So if I'm pulling out, even every time I put a guard on or I go shorter or longer, if I pull out a little bit on the guard, each time on the clipper, it's going to cut out that line. You know, so again, kind of an arc motion. Okay. So the scissors, going back to the scissors, or shears, when we're doing scissor over comb, we want to follow, this is basically our guide. This is where, you know, where the shears are going to go. We're going to follow this. So if I just make sure that my thumb is constantly moving on these, and I mean pretty quickly, and I'm paying attention to where my shears are, it takes a little dexterity, it takes a little practice. Like the analogy of playing a guitar. If you're learning how to play a guitar, it takes a while to really learn how to play the guitar. Now if you start singing with the guitar, your brain's doing two different things. You're using both sides of your brain, so it's harder. A lot of times you'll stop playing the guitar because you're concentrating on your vocals. It's the same thing with the shears and the comb. You know, you're doing two different things, so your brain's going to want to do two different things. But if you kind of just practice it and keep in mind that everywhere my comb goes, my shears are going to follow. And if I'm using the top of the comb, that's going to guide which angle I'm putting on the head. So if I'm mindful of the way that my comb is moving forward and back, and I'm just keeping my thumb moving, as simple as it is. Pros is it's a cleaner cut. Like I said before, you get a better grow out, you have maximum mobility. I can, you know, work around the head a lot easier with the shears. And it gives me a point of difference over